ayuntamiento a las 5 habrá gran función de cine.
A Pause for Cinema is made possible by the support of my generous patrons on Patreon. The first thing that a fascist dictatorship often seeks to destroy is the imagination of its youth. Among many other coercions, it was through the Hitler Youth Corps that the Nazi government of mid-century Germany created a generation that consented and abetted to the genocide of more than 17 million Jews, Slavs, homosexuals, and other people termed enemies of the state. Hitler's contemporary and ally Francisco Franco, the head of the Spanish state from the end of the Spanish Civil War in 1939 to his death in 1975, similarly targeted children as the ideal with which to form the base of his nationalist Spanish state.
Estás construyendo personas que evidentemente pues, no tienen sentido crítico, porque esto está escrito de una manera que es una orden.
During Franco's 36-year tenure as dictator, Catholic clergy taught pseudoscientific concepts such as racial eugenics at public schools, while doctors would give the newborn children of Republican families to nationalist parents, proclaiming those same children dead to their actual parents. This youth-driven project of indoctrination laid the foundations for a Spain that, to this day, struggles with the ghosts of the 20th century.
El sitio de la polla. En la polla.
Fascist strongmen like Franco and Hitler did this because they understood that the biggest threat to fascism was the imagination of the young. By performing a holocaust on the imagination of the youth, political bodies like the Nazis and the Spanish Falange not only eliminated a threat to their movements, but managed to grow their numbers by welcoming the very minds that would otherwise seek to destroy it. A quick side note, I will be referring henceforth to the powers which ran the dictatorship, alternatively as Francoists and Phalangists, which, for the sake of this video, can be thought of as two monikers describing the same political actors and ideology. It's thus clear why the youth was a particular source of interest for intellectuals and artists coming out of the mid-century crisis. Spanish filmmakers saw the early years of the Francoist era as one in which their youth would have to occult their search for identity from the ruling government. Therefore, the explorations of these identities tend to be much more subdued, hidden within the realm of dreams, as if because of the threat they posed in the real world, they were relegated to one of the imagination. The Spirit of the Beehive is a film which seems constructed within the realm of dreams. A 1973 production by Spanish filmmaker Victor Erice, it tells the story of a young girl who increasingly becomes obsessed with the image of Frankenstein's monster after seeing the 1932 Boris Karloff film. Spirit of the Beehive opens with the following epigraph: Érase una vez un lugar de la meseta castellana hacia 1940. Once upon a time in the Castilian plain, circa 1940. By then, while the rest of Europe was at war, Franco's Nazi-backed Falange government held a firm grip over power in Spain. By setting the film in the Castilian plain, Erice places the viewer directly into the ideological heartland of Phalangism. The film's characters are rural dwellers, its society is patriarchal and staunchly Catholic. Ana, the film's protagonist, lives with her stern by-the-book father, her sister, mother, and the help.
¿Pero qué escándalo es este?
In a particularly large estate, which serves as subtext, which places the family as wealthy benefactors and perhaps even supporters of the dictatorship. Early on in the film, the town gets a visit by a traveling projectionist who showcases Frankenstein to a public which, it's safe to assume, has never seen a motion picture before. Erice emphasizes the imaginative wonder of the townspeople by showing close-up reactions to the film, placing Ana's particularly amongst them. We see her imagination turning as she is watching the film, engaging with what is a fantastical world which, as we will see later in the film, inspires her own sense of adventure and questioning for the strict order with which contemporary Spanish society operated. This is exemplified when Ana asks her sister Isabel whether or not the monster actually killed a young girl in the movie, to which Isabel replies,
¿Cómo sabes que no muere? Porque en el cine todo es mentira, es un truco.
Isabel functions as a catalyst into the film and Anna's thematic navigation of imagination and the indoctrination of children. That same night, Isabel does not fully shut down Anna's curiosity, as she refers to the monster as a spirit to which one may communicate.
Puedes hablar con él cuando quieras. Cierras los ojos y le llamas.
Later in the film, Isabel takes Anna to an isolated, abandoned house sitting on the plain, which she claims is the home of Frankenstein's monster. On their first visit, the house is empty, but when Anna later returns by herself, she finds a wounded guerrilla soldier hiding from the Francoist authorities. It might be safe to assume that Anna, a young child, believes that this is the monster which she saw in the film, albeit in a different form. Yet the gorilla treats Anna kindly, performing some magic tricks for her. Not knowing any better, Anna comes to see the soldier, and by extent the monster, as a friend. She reciprocates this kindness by giving him a coat which she stole from her father's closet, as well as his watch. What Erise is showing us here then is the shifting of a perspective. When the Phalangist police discover the guerrilla soldier hiding out in the house, alongside the articles Anna had gifted him, Anna is castigated by her father. She realizes that in his complicity with the Francoist regime, and his lack of sympathy for the murdered soldier, her father cannot provide her with the same friendship that she had felt with both the soldier and the monster. The climax of the film then shows Anna running away to escape from this apathy. While the townspeople are out looking for her, she hides out by a river, not too dissimilar from the one featured in the Frankenstein film. And at the moment of her biggest distress, it is Frankenstein's monster himself, or Anna's projection of him, who comes to her, kneels by her side, and embraces her, something that no one else could have done for her. With The Spirit of the Beehive, Erise pioneered an aesthetic that reshapes our thematic understanding of monsters in cinema. The film in many ways asks, who are the monsters? Is it the battered, defeated creatures with which Anna makes friends? Or is it the Phalangist police, who appear sparsely in the film, operating within the shadows until it comes time to execute those who our protagonists see with love? These themes have carried forward into another film, more recent, which also protagonizes a young woman navigating the oppressive forces of Francoist Spain, Guillermo del Toro's Pan's Labyrinth. Similar to Spirit of the Beehive, Pan's Labyrinth features a magical, uncanny creature in the faun, which serves as a friend to our protagonist, Ophelia, a young girl who turns to the fairy world as a way of escaping the truth about her present, and in so doing, often seeks the comfort of the faun in order to console herself. The most significant sign of affection throughout the entire film is an embrace shared between the two after she feels that she has failed him. He offers her second chances in spite of her persistent disobedience.
He decidido daros otra oportunidad.
And is quick to guide her throughout her journey to return to the underworld of which he claims she is a princess. Compare the faun then with Ophelia's stepfather, Capitan Vidal, a stern Francoist with a hard-set face that seldom smiles within the film. Though his faction might be victorious, Vidal remains obsessed with pursuing his enemies in the surrounding forests, hunting them relentlessly as a monster would. At one point in the film, Vidal even becomes mutilated when questioning the housemaid Mercedes about her links to those same enemies. She cuts his face, giving him a nightmarish scar across his cheek. It is this monster which really haunts Ophelia, the one from which she tries to escape into the world of her imagination, which her mother and Vidal claim is dangerous for her, despite the fact that they ignore the real-life threats which occur daily within Franco's Spain. Yet at the same time, there are various moments in which Del Toro draws connections between Ophelia's fairy world and the world run by Capitan Vidal. Fairies crawl out from the rocks and turn from insects into their fantastical alterns. The faun seems to mesh out from the darkness in which it is hidden to reveal itself to Ophelia various times in the movie. But Del Toro also uses metaphor and imagery to invoke the sense that both worlds are more connected than they might seem. At a dinner party hosted by Vidal, a banquet is shared with members of his cabinet. These people are in fact eating very well, as opposed to the rest of the country at the same time. Juxtapose this scene with that in which Ophelia visits the Pale Man, an ogre which sits at the head of a banquet, as did Vidal. It is here that Ofelia provokes the Pale Man to wake up and pursue her down its chamber, similar to how Vidal chases her through the titular labyrinth towards the end of the film, when she escapes with her newborn brother. Here, Del Toro is highlighting the true nature of Vidal by showing us that he and the Pale Man are one and the same, devouring the imaginations of children for their own security, even killing them in a vain attempt to maintain power. This reveals to the audience that the nightmare of Franco's dictatorship does not exclusively exist within the real world. Rather, it permeates through the conscience of both society and the individual, so much so that it remains a haunting force to the current day. After Franco's death in 1975, Spain was quick to change course and model its government after other European constitutional monarchies. Yet this political upheaval also included the implementation of the Pacto de Olvido, the Pact of Forgetting, a bastardized form of Abraham Lincoln's malice towards none and charity towards all. Criminals who would have been persecuted under a truly democratic system were forgiven, and the memory of more than 400,000 people who spent time in prisons, camps, and forced labor battalions, as well as the more than 400,000 who died as a result of the Spanish Civil War, were forgotten. This bizarre twist of fate has led to Spanish Republicans today asking for reparation for family members buried in mass graves, while their persecutors remain free members of society. I previously mentioned how, throughout the years of the dictatorship, babies born to Republican families were also kidnapped by doctors and given to fascist families.
85-year-old Eduardo Vela is accused of abduction and the illegal adoption of an infant half a century ago.
This monstrous act in and of itself is perhaps the best metaphor to understanding the Pacto de Olvido. It is asking for the families of kidnapped children to forget that those children were kidnapped, just as those children have never learned the truth about their identity. When writing on Spirit of the Beehive, critic Kristen Thompson mentions that the way children are used within films is, quote, to help us see the world of the adults around them through fresh eyes, to take the familiar and make it seem strange, unquote. This is in fact what the Spirit of the Beehive and Pan's Labyrinth seek to do in exploring the imaginary worlds of their protagonists. By engaging the viewer in their surrealist landscapes, Erice and Del Toro reveal new perspectives on a conflict which still impacts its society even after half a century of democracy. These efforts are critical to understanding where the world is today and why fascism is once more taking hold in so many places. We must now both seek out and seek to understand these perspectives if we are to avoid repeating the catastrophe of the 20th century. And to evoke the closing statements of the narrator in Pan's Labyrinth, such perspectives are observable for those who know where to look. Thanks for watching.